The larger system or the paradigm in which we live exerts an invisible but very powerful influence on us. All the systems that drive our lives, the economic, social, political, educational, and technological systems, for example, are all embedded in and have emerged from what we can call modernity. Since this is the environment in which we live, we are not very aware of how these large and invisible systems affect us. A little bit like the fish which is not aware of the water it swims in, or people like us who, by and large, are not aware of the great atmospheric blanket of air that presses down on us and inside which we live our lives. Tradition, according to the great scholar Ananda Kumaraswamy, has the following three traits. It has a sacred origin and is grounded in eternal truth. It has an unbroken lineage passed down from one generation to the next, and it is rationally understandable. According to this, all practices and habits that are part of specific cultures cannot be termed as tradition. For example, the fact that in very cold places like Tibet, people seldom take baths cannot be considered a tradition. Whereas treating the guests as divine, like we say Atiti Devo Bhava, is a tradition. A.K. Sharan, from the same lineage of Ananda Kumaraswamy, writes that modernity is defined by the following three traits. It is inherently violent. Erosion of human values, self-consciousness and shame towards one's own, and ecological destruction are examples of what this means. It is newness seeking. Anything new is assumed to be better than the old. There is also a confusion between newness, originality, and creativity. In tradition, things are verified and accepted over a long period of time, but modernity is quick in reaching conclusions. For example, new medicines appear out of nowhere and then vanish when they discover the side effects after some time. It is rootless. Rootedness points to being grounded in eternal truths. For example, in tradition, the choice of food is based on understanding of health, which is the same for all. In modernity, the choice of food is based on taste that is ever changing, while mostly ignoring the essential requirement of health. The contrast between tradition and modernity seems to be that tradition is based on eternal, unchanging, perennial truth, whereas modernity is based on individual preferences which have no root. In the next chapter, we will look in more detail at modern systems and how they impact our lives. But for now, I hope that the contrast between tradition and modernity has given you an idea of what we mean by modernity. Of course, education systems across the world are part of modernity and as such embody the problems that are inherent in modern systems. If we look a little closely, it becomes obvious that our long process of education is designed to turn us into automatons who mindlessly accept modern opinions and values without examining them critically. In 1909, on his way from England to South Africa, Gandhiji wrote a small book, Hind Swaraj, that takes a clear look at the illusionary nature of modernity. Modernity is all about control. It controls people indirectly through systems and by influencing their perceptions. While giving them the illusion of freedom, it makes them dependent on the system for everything. In Hind Swaraj, Gandhiji deconstructs 5 major modern systems: education, health, system of governance, justice, and technology. The read segment has an excerpt which may inspire you to read the whole book. I highly recommend that you do so. Let us now start looking at how modernity has impacted our lives. Even today, if you ask someone from a small town or village of India who they are, they reply by saying that they are part of such and such community or jati, or that they are from a lineage of some particular craftsmanship. In other words, their answer speaks about their V identity. In a city with people cut away from their roots and brought up for one or more generations under the modern education system, the answer to who they are will be that I am Dr. So and so and I work in this place and I've studied in this famous institution, etc. In other words, the answer will reflect their I identity. This move from a we or societal or familial identity to an I or individual identity is something that is built into modernity. One of the fundamental ideas that drive modernity is the idea of individualism. It is extremely attractive because it aligns with the modern idea of freedom, which conveys to the individual his or her right to do as he or she pleases. Individualism, which is closely linked with the I identity, encourages people to compare with the other. They unthinkingly aspire to acquire traits, style, material goods, status, degrees, etc., as thrust upon them by market forces, to appear special and different in comparison to the other. In short, success is defined not by the individual but by the market forces. The individual is a very weak entity in comparison to a rooted samaj and can be easily manipulated by the prevailing market forces and media and the world of fashion, including fashionable ideas. This is good for the market economy, which thrives on unnecessary consumption, converting every want into a need. The weakened and manipulated individuals become mindless consumers, feeding the modern economy. The people who live in the we identity are more grounded in comparison. Their environment is more conducive to focusing on needs rather than wants. In such a society, excessive consumerism or showing off is discouraged. So, it is in the interest of the market to encourage individualism through education and media. There is another aspect that needs to be highlighted. The modern nation state is a new entity not more than a few hundred years old and thrives on individualism. The individual is rootless and is dependent on the systems of modernity. While the we identity is more self reliant, rooted, and can stand up against the state. For example, if the state is being forced by vested interests to cut down forests, a society grounded in we can sustain a Chipko movement that takes on the state and manages to stop the cutting down of trees. An individual who is sold the imaginary idea of freedom and rights has no real power and is forced to submit to all the whims of the state. So, the idea of the we is not in alignment with the idea of the modern state. What you need to examine for yourself is whether the whole idea of individualism is making you stronger, more self reliant, more confident, more prosperous, and a better human being, or is it making you more dependent and rootless? Our experience of reality has two aspects: the stable, unchanging, intrinsic, unseen, intangible being part, we are calling it the sthiti, and the changing, sensorial, tangible, manifested doing or behaving part, we are calling it the gati. Sthiti and gati are like two sides of the same coin. We have already talked about some sthiti gati pairs in previous chapters. Let us first look at the I and we identities. The I identity is gati centric. It is mostly about quantitative aspects like wealth, status, income, degree, clothes, material possessions, etc. All these can be compared. In contrast, the we identity is sthiti centric. It is mostly about qualitative aspects like honesty, integrity, courage, and pride in one's culture and traditions, etc. For example, it is possible to hear someone say that no one steals in our samaj or that we are brave people. We have also earlier looked at word and meaning. You can now easily see that word is the gati aspect and meaning is the sthiti aspect. Words are external symbols that are in a language, whereas meaning is always an inner process that is beyond language. Knowing the word and not the meaning is no good, but knowing the meaning and not the exact word may still serve a purpose. The word is a symbol which is different in different languages, whereas meaning is existential. Let us look at some other gati sthiti pairs to make the distinction clear. We can start with hearing listening, that is directly connected to word and meaning. We hear a word but we listen to the meaning. So, hearing is the gati aspect, and listening, that is to do with understanding the meaning, is the inner sthiti aspect. Another important distinction between information and knowledge is being ignored in present day education. Information is something that keeps changing both with time and space. It doesn't remain the same. Information needs to be remembered or stored to be retrieved later. Knowledge, on the other hand, is something which once gained becomes one's own and does not need to be memorized. Strangely, any book of general knowledge today is only full of information. This adds to the confusion, and information is unknowingly assumed to be knowledge. Finally, let us look at the distinction between getting influenced and getting inspired. Influencing or impressing is always with the outer veneer, the gati, whereas inspiration is always an inner process to do with sthiti. Getting influenced leads to imitation. On the other hand, we get inspired by the intrinsic qualitative aspects which cannot be copied. The quality gets manifested in different individuals naturally and in their unique manner. Modern education and modern systems are almost entirely Gati focused. If you are only focused on Gati, you are prone to be manipulated. Because Gati, like fashion, keeps changing and the people in control of setting these trends are faceless. Once these parameters are accepted almost unconsciously by us, we end up constantly comparing ourselves with the other, leading to irresolvable tensions. Education needs to be sthiti focused and Gati needs to be treated the way it is, subordinate to sthiti. The decision making, if it is sthiti centric, then the doing, the manifested Gati part would naturally follow, taking into account the circumstances. In the process of education, the shift of focus from Gati to Sthiti will help create grounded children with Nirapeksha Atmavishwas and authentic Sahaj behavior.